Hi, this is Priyanka and I welcome you all to Srijan Wednesday webinars. For those who are attending for the first time, this is a community initiative by Srijan Technologies. As a part of this initiative, we will host webinars every alternate Wednesday. We will have speakers from different domains who will talk about subjects like front-end technologies, UI UX, mobile apps, media, entrepreneurship, community building, digital marketing, and many more. In today's webinar, Rahul will talk about the role of luck and serendipity in business and how being agile has helped Srijan in its success so far. The last 15 minutes will be for a Q&A round. Please press the raise hand button on your control panel to ask your question by speaking into your microphone, or you can type your question into the chat box below. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today's webinar. We have with us Rahul Devan. Rahul is the founder and CEO of Srijan Technologies. He is a Drupal and open source evangelist and has a keen interest in incubating social and for-profit tech businesses. He is also a green activist and practices yoga and meditation regularly. So before we start the webinar, I would like to run a quick poll. Please select the appropriate option on your screen. The poll is open for about a minute, so please select the appropriate option. We'll keep the poll open for another 15 seconds. Those who have not selected an option, please go ahead and do it. Thank you so much for giving us the options. Now, without wasting any more time, I would like to start with the session. So over to you, Rahul.
Hi, thanks Priyanka. Can you all hear me clearly?
We can hear you clearly.
Okay, thanks for joining today. I was not sure if, normally I'm very nervous in my presentations, even though I've given several now, but each time is a new one and I'm always nervous. This time I thought I wouldn't be talking to a computer screen, but I still am. So this talk is about my journey at Srijan. It is about business, it is about agile, it is about entrepreneurship, the role of luck and serendipity. And so, I tried to generate a little bit of a tag cloud on some of the things that impact us in our business. And in my opinion, luck does stand out. I will talk more about this in a bit as I go along, whether this is dumb luck or what serendipity and the difference between the two and things like that. So let's actually explore luck in business. Is there luck in business, or is it all hard work and smarts and guts and all of those? So I was doing a little Google search and on successful entrepreneurs. And I came across these wonderful posts saying 6 attributes of successful entrepreneurs, 7 traits of, and so on and so forth. And all of them listed intuition, tenacity, tolerance to ambiguity, goal-orientedness, rule-breaking, great vision, passion, self-belief, all of those things. I was wondering if really people have all of these things before they become entrepreneurs, or do they learn some of these values which are important for success in entrepreneurship as they go along? And that's sort of what I want to question and explore with you a little bit. people say that, a very strong mission statement, a vision statement of what you want to, how you want to change the world, what do you intend to fix in the world, and all of these big ideas, they make successful entrepreneurship. But to be honest, only a very few people are able to articulate things very clearly at the start of their businesses. Disney, as far as I know, clearly knew that his mission was to make people happy. Microsoft, I was actually, for my presentation, reading up a little bit of history of Microsoft and Google, and it seems that Bill Gates and Alan actually, had this vision of having a computer at every desk. Google did want to organize the world's information, as they say in their mission or vision. But then there are a whole lot of other large, very well-known enterprises. Let's look at the Virgin Group, which is Virgin Atlantic and so on and so forth. It was a mail order company. 3M was a mining company which almost died, brutally died. Their directors, promoters did not take salaries for, I think, 2 years before they were able to revive the company as an innovation company, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. Sony was actually called Totsuko and used to make wire mesh bread heaters after World War II. Nokia started as a paper pulp company. None of them had this grand vision of what they were going to change in the world or make a dent. But all that vision, in my opinion, in most successful businesses evolves over time. Serendipity happens. So serendipity is defined as, it actually has its origins in a Persian fairy tale. I forget the name, the Tales of Serendip or something like that, where the princes, the 3 princes, were always making discoveries by accident and sagacity of things they were not in quest of. They were all fortuitous happenings. And in my opinion, serendipitous events happen. Very often entrepreneurs, successful businessmen, successful people who have risen in, in leadership positions in companies, whether as promoters, owners, or just as employees, CEOs, CXOs, they've all, in my interactions with people, they all seem to have some sort of serendipitous events which are outside of their skills. But very few tend to acknowledge them. How do you classify these? It's a chance meeting with a future partner, a lucky lunch meeting with a big potential client, or a phone call. Or let's look at Newton, an apple falling from a tree just when he's dealing with questions of gravity. 3M, when it was struggling and not taking, when the directors were not taking salaries for whatever 2 years or so, they actually had a mandate among their employees who had also sacrificed a lot of salaries. I think they were taking bare minimum salaries just to run. One of the key person in the company who started with whom the breakthrough started happening, he was actually watching some wall painters, paint walls of a house or an office or something like that. And they were struggling to scrub the old paint off and all. That's when the idea of the sandpaper came in. That was probably the first product that 3M made, and that started the journey of an innovation company. These were all serendipitous events. Did he go out and think sandpaper? No, he did not. These happened. So few entrepreneurs, and my experience is that specifically in the West, it's very individualistic culture, and not many are trained to look at or give credit to events or occurrences outside their own endeavor, their own skills and traits. But luck really is not a bad word, and you can actually make yourselves lucky. Let's look at that. So there is a wonderful book, written by Jan and Harrington and Hussein, which it's called Heart, Smarts, Guts, and Luck. And these guys have identified 4 areas of successful CEOs, CXOs, and entrepreneurs, and they say that all the entrepreneurs and founders are heavy on at least one of these traits. They might have a combination, but they do have traits. So surely there are very smart people who have identified a terrific uh, opportunity, a business opportunity. There are people who are very gutsy, and yet there is other two equally important pieces on heart and luck. These are people, if you read through the book, there are different kinds of competencies that these people have. But let me actually explore luck a little bit here. And I'd like to read this out. Lucky people have an openness, an authenticity, and a generosity towards embracing people without overthinking what's the value exchange here. Everything is not transactional to these people. They would go out and help somebody without a rhyme or reason. They would have a private conversation with a colleague, anything. They would participate in somebody else's business. They would not perhaps be scared of sharing a new innovative idea they're working on, or helping another product company with ideas without thinking too much of a transaction or money on the table. And I could give examples at Srijan of how this has started becoming a little bit of a DNA at Srijan. I'll probably come to that as I go along in the presentation. There's a beautiful quote I came across while I was learning creative writing 3 years ago at a research center, and so there's a lady called Shama Fateh Ali. She's no more, but was a wonderful writer. In her short English, short lifetime, she wrote some beautiful poetry and some great articles. She used to be invited to schools and colleges, to talk to kids. And it seems somebody had asked her that, how do you write so beautifully? And she said, learn to live and you shall learn to write. What she really meant was living a little deeply, not at the surface. A lot of us actually spend a whole lifetime living on at the surface. Our ideas about what we want from life, our ideas of religion and spirituality, our ideas of how we work, our relationship with work, very often is very superficial. Our relationships with our family, maybe families stronger, but most work relationships are often very superficial. And then we talk about work-life balance. What is not life? Is work not life? Of course it is, right? So I mean, work is life, your life is life, your family is life, your colleagues are life, all of this is life. So in my opinion, it's a question of living deeply, and then you can learn almost everything that's available or that's to be learned in context of whatever you want to do. So, I want to jump to the story of Srijan a little bit. This is a little bit of a personal, deeply personal to me, but I did want to share some of these things here. In bits and pieces in different presentations, but I do want to take you through this to try and give context or a connect between serendipity and how it affects business, at least how it affected me and my journey so far at Srijan. So we were established in 2002. There was really no grand articulated vision. There was no mission statement. I was very adamant about how the logo must look. Okay, so I did define some, very carefully what the value systems of the logo that must reflect in the logo. Freedom, which meant to me freedom of expression. That is why, free brush strokes in our logo. You see the logo on the top right hand corner. It has actually free brush strokes. It symbolizes a tree which stood for integrity, growth, sharing. And these were value systems that I wanted to, which were very close to me. And as is perhaps is in most businesses, the value systems of the promoter or set of promoters, the early employees, gets translated into what becomes the DNA or the culture, and it starts to then over time, then it becomes a culture of a conglomerate, of all the people who are contributing to the company. Initially it starts with probably the entrepreneurs and whoever are the early founders. 2002-3, first year and a half, we were doing PHP, ASP, hand-coded CMSs. I've almost always at the beginning of my career in '97 been a content management guy. I used to hand-code very large sites. So largest food website that came out of Singapore was one of the largest in the world. I wrote it all by hand and used to maintain it every month and so on and so forth. There were no CMSs that time. And then, used to do things in ASP and in Java and all of that. Anyhow, so 2002, end of it, or early 2003, we got an opportunity to participate at a non-profit tech conference in Geneva called ICT4D. We got a little funding by the World Bank through another agency. And there, I think this was December 2003, if I'm not wrong. We met IDRC, and this is a sort of a US aid counterpart from Canada, and they were on a CMS called PostNuke. PostNuke, we didn't know it that time. We used to work on PHP, and there was this lady, the director of the program. She walked up to our booth and said, "Oh, good to see you guys from India here. We are trying to move our site called NRAP from Canada to India because we are headquartered there, and we want to manage it from there. Can you guys work on it?" And like most other entrepreneurs are, whether you can or you cannot, you always say yes. So you said yes, of course we can. And I called up my folks from Geneva itself and said, okay, there is this something called PostNuke. It's in PHP. Please look it up. Here is the site which needs to be replicated, and let's see if we can replicate it. Sure enough, we did. And I think a week later in Delhi, I gave a demo to this lady, and she was thoroughly impressed with us, and we did get the contract. So over the course of next 2-3 months, we actually built and migrated and maintained their site, and all of that happened. And then I was really surprised, and I was searching. I was like, all this they've given for free. It's called open source. I never knew about it before that. And while I was searching, I hit upon something called Typo3, and I read its the feature list, and honestly, my jaw dropped. I was zapped that somebody could do all of this and give it out for free, and open source the code, and that we could build a business on top of it. And once again, I asked just one colleague to pulled her out of projects and said, okay, you need to start learning Typo3, as if it was another piece of cake that we would be easily sort of getting to learn, whatever. However, within just about 2 months of getting this colleague of mine started on Typo3 and talking about it on our website a little bit, our first inquiry was from this humongous retail chain in Germany, which had their entire systems on Typo3. And to be honest, I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't ask for it. I didn't do, and this guy, the head of their technology, I remember this gentleman, very nice person. He was Googling for us, and somehow he found us, just with perhaps one article, that a little blog that I had written about PostNuke, and our, that we are trying to get to Typo3. He say to him on how competent we are in Typo3. He knew that we weren't. So he actually said, look, I'm not going to bother you with Typo3 first. Why don't you do these little PHP apps for me first? And he was smart enough to understand, how people like me behave. So that started our journey, but eventually we did a ton of work for them on Typo3. That's how we started growing from, we were 5 people, 6 people maybe, for 2 years. And then, we started growing on Typo3. We rode that wave and became a 15, 20 people company over the course of time. 2004 to 7, I think, 10, 15, I think we started edging towards 20, 18, 20 people. But the landscape was that we were short-term projects, we were fairly profitable, each project size was, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 euros, 500 euros to 3,000, 4,000, euros, that kind of thing. All our markets were in Germany and Netherlands. We were in Typo 3. In India, we were, barely doing anything at the beginning of this, the Typo 3 journey. All leads came through our site, probably doing some SEOs, nicely. We did end up working with Airtel and the Bharti group. Once again, never intended that. I don't even recall where the reference came in from. And I was a really young kid that time. Just 10 years ago, and I remember sitting in a room with the board of directors at Airtel, and I was trying to help them improve their site. It was really bad. It was really bad. So we did a very good job. We ran it on Typo 3 for 3-4 years, before IBM and others took over and all of that. But to be honest, I never went after it. It landed. It landed on my plate, and I just had to raise myself to deal with that. During this period, I came across 3 very interesting and life-changing books for me. Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck, Maverick by Ricardo Semler, and Conversations with God. This is a 3-series book by Neil Donald Walsh. Semler is actually is truly a maverick. He's an entrepreneur. He has now a $1 billion company in Brazil, and is a case study in Harvard. If you Google for him, you'll find a ton of videos and things written by him, and his videos taken by Harvard. And that's where I first read about self-organizing teams, about people who define their own salaries. This man was experimenting with all of it, and the person who recommended this to me, once again, was connected with my first boss, and somehow we landed up, and after a 15-minute lunch conversation where we got introduced, he said, "Oh, Rahul, I must recommend that you read Maverick. You will learn some fantastic ideas, which I think you should implement in your business, because I think all businesses should have these." Anyhow, so I did take his advice, read the book, also read Road Less Traveled. And I think they started, this was the seed of the first ideas of transparency and open salaries and self-organizing teams, allowing people to define their own salaries and all that business. We did a lot of experiments. I failed a lot. I was very scared of doing this. I thought people, when they get to know the finances of a small company, they'll quit. I used to be worried about every second month's salary. I probably had enough to figure out the first month's salary and so on and so forth. Do read up some of these books. I think Conversations with God, jumping to that, talks about some really terrific ideas on how transparency around the world can actually be a world-changing. It can resolve conflicts that we have regularly around the world. I won't go too much into that. I'll leave it to you to read the 3 series. So like I was sharing, that this was the period we were experimenting with open books and finances and salaries, and started experimenting with a little bit of profit sharing and self-organizing teams with their independent P&L. We did something, undid it. Very difficult to deal with. We didn't share profits every year, so I had my tail between my legs and all of that. But the culture that had started emerging was, we did start becoming very team-oriented. We took on challenges. This was quite tough, and tougher periods came. But even during this time, I used to think to myself that, is it enough? I mean, when is a time? People said never say quit and all of that. But so it was always a question, not always, but every now and then at the back of my mind, that is it valuable to quit? Is it valuable to go back to a job? Or it took me 4 or 5 years to get back to the salary I was taking when I quit, by the way. So it wasn't easy. But and it was the team really, the early few members. I used to discuss openly with 2-3 of them who are here even now after all these years at Srijan. I think they kept me going on, giving a little encouragement, and that no, let's actually go on. These times will pass as well, or this is just a temporary tough phase. And it's been ups and downs, and but I think that taught us to be responsive. It taught us to be nimble. I think it built responsibility in a huge number of early people at Srijan. Because I think they were not only taking responsibility for their own lives, but of where Srijan is going, and we all sort of became a little bit of a unit wanting to do something with this. Then came the year. It actually got tougher. So when bigger projects started coming in, bigger in that context, there were sort of about 30K sizes and stuff like that. But most of these projects were always fixed cost. And almost always we were running into incorrect estimations. Tail of the projects never ended. I mean, it dragged endlessly. And each time we bore the brunt. The client never paid for it. And when I say tail of the project, it's not necessarily because we were messing up because of processes. It was just that the client would sleep for 3 days, come back, oh yeah, I want this changed. Or yeah, you send a mail and they're not responding. And technically the project is not closed, it's live, but there are few things which are sort of just continuing and the client is in slow mode. But supposedly we are not, we have to still have our team or people engaged on the project. And so there was finger pointing all over, and there was low morale, low developer morale, low leadership morale. And to be honest, these were the years that we were actually not doing well financially. In the earlier years, even though projects were smaller, but we were still financially doing pretty well. We were firstly small, but yeah, we were probably much better financially. This was a tougher game. It just got tougher for us. But these were also the most transformative years, especially the 2010 to 2012 area, and I'll just come to that. One more thing was happening at this stage was that financial constraints were because largely that you weren't able to staff people on new projects, so you weren't able to cleanly kick off new projects because the others were dragging, and so people were jumping between projects sometimes in a single day. Or there was a one-person team ending a project and a one-person team starting a project, and all this nonsense was also happening. So about this time, towards the end of this 2011, while doing my research on my emails for this presentation, I was actually finding out that 2011 was sort of a very transformative year in some ways. So I was at NASSCOM Emerge Out, and I heard a speaker, a panelist sitting there saying that, they knew, he was told that Infosys had its revenues, they knew its revenues 2 years ahead. So they know now what they're going to earn 2 years from now because they have signed contracts. So these were long-term contracts for Infosys. And so this panelist was saying, I was doing projects and I got out of projects to get into long-term contracts. And here was I thinking, wow, how do I do that? And so maybe this is the whole game. This is really what you have to do. And there was a session by Mindtree's CEO, KK Natarajan. I remember that session very clearly because 2 people leading it. KK was a co-lead on that, and I was asking all these questions about rapid growth versus losing your values and the conflict that there was in my mind and all of that. And I remember asking one question where one of the speakers actually said, that's a really good question, but I'm sorry, we can't answer that for you. You'll have to define where you want to go with your company. And remaining small and just focusing on some key areas, and I remember he gave the example of a famous bike company now called Enfield, to make a point about where we wanted to go. Anyhow, during this conversation, there was this woman sitting as one of the audience, and she walked up to me and said, Rahul, I want to introduce you to a business program that I'm doing right now. I was, and she wrote a wonderful mail to me later. And to me, this was simply an act of generosity. This was that, this ingredient of what I call luck. I'm actually now, 3 years later, uh, I've helped that company in my own ways. It just so happens things turned in a certain way that I've been participating in their company. So, like I said, I was thinking about how do I get all these long-term contracts and how could I negotiate with clients, and not fixed costs and all of that. And then happened AgileCon. I was talking about distributed startups. We had just begun some work in Dharamshala. I'll just come to that. And I met an agile coach who actually told me, he was from Sweden, if I remember correctly. Wonderful man, gave 15-20 minutes to me, talking to me. And he said, break your project down into phases and charge for estimations. I was like, what? Who's going to pay us for estimations? And he said, no, you must, spend enough time on doing estimations and charge for it. You have to educate your clients. And then he actually said, bad idea to hundreds of pages of documents. We had actually done one project like that for a big SI in India. Huge documentation we did on an architecture for a LMS kind of a project. Actually traveled to US doing all of that. So he obviously acknowledged that client education and on agile contracting and breaking projects and getting to be paid for estimations is not an easy thing to do. It's tough, but you do have to make a choice. How do you want your company to grow? And to his mind, the best way to grow or to build a valuable company would be on an agile company. So these are all things that were sort of coming together. There were fresh ideas emerging. And I was wondering how to find this product company, who would give us this. Anyhow, we invited an agile Scrum trainer. During this time, just about this time, we had merged with another smaller company, and we were going through all this churn process also of the crew companies merging and all of that. Anyhow, I joined the business program that this lady recommended to me, and it was big. It was really a landmark series over a year for me. And one of the key things that came out was the purpose of a business is to do business. This may sound simple, but when you want to do business with all the value systems and all the nice things that you want to do in the world, when you carry all of that, it sometimes can become rather conflicting. For example, let's look at some of these. Let me give you an example of toothpaste companies. In India, I'll not name any company, but I read an article that all of them have increased the mouths of the tube of toothpastes. And the reason they've done that is because while whatever toothpaste you used for brushing is enough, they want you to consume more. So you consume more, you waste more, you pollute the rivers more, and all of that. I think this is completely unethical. And these are questions I've never been able to deal with. But anyhow, here there was this whole pattern changing that, you've got to really focus on your business. Keep your value systems, but keep your business in mind. Keep that, do not lose that focus. If you do, you will lose focus on money, which is the key value creator for you. Because if you do not grow and if you do not have enough money, your people will not stick with you. And how about you? Look at your own self. You're doing injustice to your family by taking 1/3 of the salary that the market might pay you. So all these things started sort of coming together. And about the same time, I got this phone call, which turned out to be perhaps the most important phone call I've ever received. Was this huge management consulting company, which actually said that, oh, do you do Drupal? And I said yes. And to be honest, being in the technology business, you hardly receive phone calls. So we've never had a soft-speaking secretary who answers the phones. And so I was in a rough mood, and I picked up and said, hello. And this person on the other end said, I'm calling from the management consulting company, do you do Drupal? They are a single biggest client now, and very, very thankful for them calling up and just things working out for us, and I'll come to that as well and how that worked out. This was a tough period because I had to manage the stress now I can in hindsight look back and say that the purpose of a leader is actually to define where we are, or to identify where we are, define where we want to go, and manage the stress in between. I learned this theoretically, but I guess I did manage to manage this stress somehow during this period. We started refusing projects. I refused a very huge project which I would have leapt up, in any other time. I took a very hard stand on another project like that. My partner at this point in time, we were also discussing whether we want a lifestyle company or we want to scale, and I was totally bending towards scale now because I didn't want to keep running a lifestyle company. It didn't, the purpose of a business is to do business, sort of started seeping in very well. And the financial, the management consulting company who we started working with, they were actually agile. I'll just come to that. Started offering the financial cushion for us to make this change and manage the stress. And I'm going to repeat, none of this was planned. About during the same time, these two guys, Varun bumped into Krishnan. Krishnan actually is a mountaineer sitting in Dharamshala, and we actually started our Dharamshala office. This was the view of from our office in 2011 and 12, and people moved from Delhi. We now have a 30-people team, 30, in Dharamshala. We're the first IT company in that region. So the breakthroughs that were starting to happen this time was around Agile. And that's why I'm saying that Agile is an important part of this presentation. So we were actually promoting the presentation in Agile groups as well, because it's really helped us transform our company. It's been key to our change process. One of the big clients that I was refusing to budge and not doing a fixed cost actually turned around and they said that, oh, we love your integrity, and we'll go with you. We are refusing people who are 2/3 your price and all of that. But I think what you're suggesting is probably the right way to build a product, so we'll go with you. That offered the first breakthrough other than the management consulting company. And we had gone in for Scrum trainings, and this person, incidentally, our Scrum trainer, was moving out of his company for whatever reasons, and I offered to him that, can you actually spend 2 days with us a week, 1 or 2 days, whatever works out. He accepted the offer, and within a couple of months, we were deeply engaged. He was coming and coaching our teams. Avinash was actually working across our teams at this time. And, suddenly I had a top executive who suddenly became affordable for us because he was only coming 2 days a week. But just those 2 days started becoming so valuable for us. I wasn't reaching out to any Agile trainers. I had no idea how to get a top management guy into the company to assist in improving the quality of our projects. And suddenly this person is leaving. We've liked each other. We've liked their ideas. I was producing a video on Agile. He appreciated that. It was just sort of happening. None of this was planned. And about the same time, like I said, I joined this business program, and I was pushing Darshan to actually, he was my, my trainer at the business program. And I asked him if he would be my business coach. As a CEO, you have a certain sense of loneliness. Being at the top, you can't share your mind, you can't share your fears with everyone at the same, in the same language. You have to tone it down, sugarcoat your fears, because you don't want to talk, fearful language to your colleagues and all. Otherwise, you pass on that negativity or whatever else. But here, I could do it with him, and he became a bouncing board. He became, somebody I would be accountable to. And with Darshan, we set new goals. We set tough, stiff goals for Srijan. And it's been a upwards journey since then. What was now changing, really? We were staffing teams. There was no one-person team on a project. very rare cases every now and then, you know. Still right now some of our people get pulled in because they are so good that clients don't want to leave them, so they sort of, you know, continue like that. But largely you know, one-person teams. We were staffing teams, we were figuring out weekly burn rates, we were going to moving to 2-week sprints, we were giving client demos. Our clients have actually come back to us. They've looked at 10 to 15 companies in India before choosing us, and the reason they've chosen us and articulated that and given us a testimonial is because they said that you were the only guys who were willing to engage with us, you know, and put in all that effort that you do without asking for a check on the table. You were the only guys who were willing to, who were willing to move forward in the relationship without a transaction mindset. These are things which create that luckiness, if you like. This particular client that I'm talking about who gave us this, you know, has turned out to be a really big client for us. And we're doing some wonderful work stretching our boundaries with this client. And the reason is because we were willing to, never had this transactional mindset. We were willing to participate with them and show value, demonstrate value, you know, and allow them to see value in working with us. They are working with us at 60% higher prices than the nearest competitor. So slowly our financials became better, we were able to pay better salaries, more people joined us, we've grown. You know, devs were focused on one project at a time, they weren't scattered all over the place like they were earlier. And long-term contracts were coming to fall in our bucket, 3-4 months to a year, or long-term engagements with clients. Employee satisfaction had sort of gone up, client satisfaction was up. So where are we now? We are still chaotic, we're still in pursuit of excellence, we are very dissatisfied or discontent with where we are, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good value system to not be content, and you know, it allows us to pursue something bigger. Agile adoption is not uniform, sprint cadence, there's not enough leadership. We're trying to solve all these problems. Of course we are, you know, and things happen when you have focus on solving all these problems. There have been some long-term clients, we hug them. I think this is a separate webinar on hugging a few clients and building your company based on them. And you know, by the way, we still get some of our biggest leads serendipitously. Whenever we are feeling the heat, including as recent as 3 months ago, of the next pipeline, you know, now we are bigger, so the risk is bigger and all of that, and suddenly we would get a lead from a reference without a site or anything, just out of the blue something would pop up. No matter how hard we are trying to do our sales calling and cold calls and pitches in US and all of that, it's still the, you know, out of the blue something will pop up which will just, you know, change or keep us growing. I'm committed to this journey of Agile, and I just want to share a little bit about that. We're moving to improving our processes, and actually even our performance management system is moving to a very holistic Agile sort of a system. And we are setting up a Go office. I'm sorry, I wanted to put a few pictures here of a Go office, but that's not happening. So there is a little standard sales pitch. I will avoid this about Srijan and jump to the questions. Priyanka?
Thank you, Rahul, for sharing your presentation with us. I'm pretty sure everybody quite enjoyed it, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us so freely. It was truly a great session. Okay, so I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so please press the raise hand button on your control panel if you want to ask your question, or you can type it in the chat box below. So Rahul, we have already got a first question, and Girish is asking, how did you control and manage when you started saying no to fixed cost projects?
So I'm not sure I get the question clearly. How did I control? I mean, it was about managing the stress. So like I said, there was a large management consulting company where we had a small contract going. That allowed us financial cushion. And of course, we had a few. You have to balance that. So I guess we were able to balance, be able to take that risk. So it was a little bit of a, we will go this path or let the company shut down. It was a little bit of that when this stress had to be managed. I hope that answers the question.
All right. Yeah. Girish, if you have more questions, please type them in. And in the meanwhile, we get more questions. Why don't you just tell us some of your learnings, Rahul? Your learnings as an entrepreneur, or your learning as, running a company that has offices in multiple cities now.
I mean, I really want to go back to, I'm sorry, I'm jumping slides, and I will come back to, the point about creating your lucky network. Just give me a second. Yeah, two key things. Learn to live deeply, and you will learn how to be a good entrepreneur or a good developer or a good salesperson or marketing, whatever you do in life. I think the question is just about living a little deeply, not at the surface, and a whole lot of other things. If you are in that mode, you will learn. You will want to learn about listening, about asking people questions. There is a certain curiosity you will develop. You will stop remaining in your own mind all the time trying to tell and trying to sell. I think the orientation changes to listening and getting new perspectives. You become a little open. This all comes with a, I'm using just one term, but it's a very deep term, living deeply. And this is a beautiful statement in this book by these guys who wrote Heart, Smarts, Guts, and Luck. That it's about an authenticity and a certain generosity towards embracing people without thinking about a transaction. What am I going to get out of this? What am I going to get out of helping this guy? Why should I attend or give a presentation on entrepreneurship? Why should I organize an event where my competitors might come and learn about? These are small things. Open source grew because of people sharing. So if you look at the new age theories like books like The Secret, they actually this is very similar to that. What we're talking about here, serendipity and all of that, is actually very similar to what The Secret says, for example. If you have a little openness, if you have where you want to go, things will happen. Just allow things to happen. Very interestingly, I met a top executive, now retired, at a large telecom company in US. I just met him 3-4 weeks ago. He's retired, 65, and he was telling me that sometimes I learned the art of letting go. And he told me that sometimes I have to think of an idea. When I have an idea, I would put structure to it, I would write about it, reach out to a few people, and then all I can do is wait. Wait until things start to happen. I think he's a top, executive, like almost CEO level of a really large company. Of course, he was retired. And he was actually taking me around, giving me a hitch and taking me around to my meetings out of nothing. We didn't have a transactional relationship. He was just helping me for no rhyme and reason. And here is something that he was sharing and I was sharing. That's it. Just develop. This is what a lucky network is. This is what luck is. It is not about dumb luck. It is about doing things, small things, which will turn into right things. I guess this is how life works. Go ahead, Priyanka.
Okay. Yeah. So we have another question. Girish is asking, can you share some of your key learnings from CIM program and which helped you to uplift?
Yeah, this is probably not the right platform for that.
So we have another question by Shweta. She's asking, does stress in organization cause disarray in your personal life? If not, how do you manage both?
Everything is life, work is life, and family is life. And so yes, one part of life affects the other. Um, I don't know if I'm able to manage it completely or well, but I mean, you manage it. You deal with it. You just deal with it, right? There are ups and downs, but you deal with it. You learn to cope.
Is there some sort of advice that you would like to give them which helped you, or somebody told you something and that really worked for you?
No advice. It's just about finding your own way, really.
So we have another question by Rudra. He's
So
asking,
we can end the session. Okay.
yes, so we'll take about two more questions and then we can wrap up. So I have a question by Rudra. He's asking, as you mentioned earlier, you were worried about mission and mission of the company. Now that you've run your company for 10 years, how do you see the role of vision and mission?
Yeah, good question. I was actually, you see, now we're beginning to find a tagline for us. Now, you see all these companies who have a big tagline on their websites. I really admire ThoughtWorks as a company, for example, and one reads some amazing taglines over there. And I used to always wonder for all these years that, how can we not find? But I think that's emerging for us. What has worked was that actually at the business program I enrolled in, and Darshan, I actually enrolled him into coaching or working with a lot of us. So about 8-9 of us actually sat together over 3-4 months in every week after week, trying to define who we are, trying to define our value systems. And I guess a lot of that was in our DNA, and it just sort of started emerging. Our value systems were starting to get articulated. Our values started getting articulated. Everybody does not live the same values or the same values with that same intensity. It's different for different people, and it's different values for different people. But those were being articulated not by me alone, but by these 8-9 people in the room. We were also articulating things we want, like excellence, which we don't have. We were being honest, completely brutally honest with each other. And we were discovering these things along the way. We began to discover in those sessions that actually we are running our technology business like a hospitality company. It's customer experience. So we just don't copy from somewhere, some management book, and say customer delight and customer experience. When we say customer experience, it actually shows in our actions. It shows in our customers' testimonials on why they work with us. That's when it's true. Otherwise, it's a piece of lie hanging on your wall, and so I think all these things emerge. Your values emerge. They develop. Your taglines, what you stand for, your vision, mission starts to emerge. So I call this emergent vision. I don't think we still have a grand articulated vision, but we know what our differentiators are right now, what our value systems are fairly well articulated. Now when we hire also, we are able to judge people on those value systems, something we never ever were able to do before. We are rejecting some really smart people because they do not fit into our value systems of our company. We don't think they will grow into, we don't look at skills, ready-made skills right now, but we want people to grow into. We look at attributes of people, which they will become leaders of tomorrow at the company. So those are more important for us very often. And I guess our vision or mission will also emerge. I call it emergent vision.
All right, thank you, Rahul. I hope, Rudra, that answers your question. So I'm going to take one last question here. So Rahul, you talked about living deeply and not thinking on transactional terms, but it couldn't have been easy because you have, especially when you have salaries to pay and a bunch of outstanding expenses. So what sort of challenges did you face and how did you cope with them?
Once again, I'm not too clear about the question. I mean, you have to keep your cash flow running. You have to have a hawk eye on your cash flow. I mean, you've got to manage that because you do have to pay salaries. But what living deeply and living authentically and all of this does is it inspires people around you to not live superficially. When that happens, they tend to enroll in your ideas, even if it is unarticulated. There is a sense of camaraderie that develops in people around you. And I guess that happened to me. And now if you go back on Google and read up on successful entrepreneurs, you'll find the same things happening all over the place. I didn't read a book and did all this. It just happens. It just happens when you have a little openness to life, I guess. I guess that's my answer.
Thank you. Since we are running short on time here, I request those who still have questions to please mail them at webinars@srijan.in. Thank you once again, Rahul, for sharing your presentation with us. I'm sure everybody found it very insightful. And thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us in today's webinar. I would also love to announce that our next webinar is on why most Indian startups fail by Prashant Sharma. Prashant is the principal at Microsoft Ventures, and the webinar would be conducted on April 30th. For registrations, you'll be getting a mail from our site. So stay tuned and have a great day.